A liar. A pure liar. Yes. We are here to exorcise the devil. You are salting and massage. Is it a pedicure shop? What exorcism office will not be exorcised? Fraud. There was a hysterical curse, and the tone was full of anger. Qin Wen smiled bitterly, watching the last customer slam the door and leave him with a big middle finger. What's the matter with the liar? Even if it is a liar, I have worked hard. It is salt and massage. Didn't you give me the money? You are called a liar if you are scammed, so why not scold me for not giving money? After spitting out in his heart, he turned on the computer and looked at the full bills. It's a prostitute again. Hey, this month, I've posted hundreds of dollars in utility bills. If I don't make any money, I can switch to a massage shop. They seem to appreciate my massage skills. There may be something wrong. Qin Wen glanced at the shop with crowds of people outside the window, and then at his own exorcism office with a 100% negative rate, and the iron door was about to fall apart. He felt a little unbalanced. Qin Wen was not a person from this world, but an ordinary college student. His only hobby is probably to read horror novels. He only remembered that he was eating pizza and watching the novel. He was shocked by the horror section inside. A large piece of pizza noodles got stuck in his throat, and there was no more. Opened his eyes again and has arrived at this ghost place, which is no different from the original world, and even the technology tree is basically the same. And I am not a good place. Both my parents disappeared, leaving me with a dilapidated exorcism office. The location is still extremely remote. If it weren't for the store information made in major software, I'm afraid no one could find it. This kind of place. I thought that I was mixed with the identity of the Transcendence, and could rely on some powerful golden fingers to dominate the quartet, but Qin Wen has been in this world for almost a month, not to mention the golden fingers, and even has no income. Is there anyone who crosses the crowd more miserable than me? I said it was an exorcist, but I have only read horror novels. Do ghosts really exist? Qin Wen slumped on the chair, looking up at the cobweb ceiling, feeling extremely depressed. Qin Wen in this world is a little boss at best, but he is miserable. No one can do it. It's just because of the bad feng shui of this place. The former owner of the body is always hitting evil, whether it is a ghost press or a ghost fight wall. He can run into several times a week, and because of his poor psychological quality, he was finally overwhelmed and died suddenly in the shop, giving Qin Wen a chance. No. You have to make money, and then you can't make money. No, if you can't cheat anymore, you will switch to a massage shop. Let's eat before you have a full stomach. Qin Wen secretly vowed that in the past month, 7 or 8 guests came, saying that he was entangled by evil spirits and wanted Qin Wen to exorcise demons. But they didn't know. Qin Wen was more panicked than them. He obviously couldn't see anything, but the guests were all nervous, and the more they thought about it, the more panicked they became. He was just an ordinary person, he had never killed a chicken, let alone a ghost. If it weren't for food, he would run faster than anyone else. Qin Wen was thinking about how to be deceived by his identity as an exorcist, but the laptop that was not plugged in front of him suddenly turned on, and Qin Wen was shocked. Mom! Haunted! I was already a little weakened by those snarling customers, and when I encountered this, Qin Wen, an exorcist, was so scared that he threw himself back and fell to the ground. I didn't dare to look at the computer on the table, for fear that some female ghost sister would crawl out of it. It seemed to be good too. But after waiting for a long time, there was no fart movement. Qin Wen had the courage to look closer and found that there was no scary picture, only a simple reminder box. Congratulations, the user is about to welcome the first special guest. The Exorcism Team app has been activated. Please find a way to recruit strangers from all over the world and form your own exorcism team. Task, not activated, please recruit the first team member. Raffle, not activated, Please recruit the first team member. Ghost picture scroll, not activated. Please subdue or obliterate the first ghost. Hey? App? Could it be my cheat? Is it really okay to be so late? Qin Wen looked at the information displayed on the screen. He was not angry. He has been to this ghost place for a month. The golden finger has not been seen for a long time. He has already planned to give up hope of being a salted fish. Another weird app popped up again. Doesn't this make people mentality? And it's still related to exorcism. I'm just an ordinary person. How do you exorcise them? Do you want to laugh at them with cross-talk? Qin Wen wanted to cry without tears. How could he be so miserable? Even if he choked to death after eating pizza, he could also endure the journey to become a poor ghost, but his own golden finger was not only late, but also had to be related to ghosts. Isn't this afraid that I won't die? Just when Qin Wen was eager to lift the computer and smash it, there was a knock on the door. Qin Wen just remembered that there was a message in the message that it was about to welcome the first special guest. For those who come to the exorcism office, the word special is not necessarily a good thing. Is there anyone? I want you to help me. The voice outside the door sounded relatively immature and weak. He was a little boy, who seemed to be 12 or 3, and he could tell the introverted character of the other party just from his tone of voice. Here is the special guest? What a special method! Qin Wen is like a big enemy. If he usually comes to visit guests, he will definitely nod and bow to greet them, but now the computer prompts special, it must be different from other guests, whether it is not always the same. Ahem, please come in. Qin Wen thought about the movies he had watched in his previous life, and put on a confident and comfortable appearance. He sat calmly behind his desk and looked like a dog, but what he thought was that he was away from here. Recently, if there is something wrong with the window, you can jump through the window and run away for the first time. Excuse me. The one who opened the door was a student with a mushroom head. He was not tall and dressed in school uniform. His eyes were a little dodgy, and he looked terrified. Well, please sit down. Qin Wen had a dignified look, elegantly holding a disposable paper cup and drank a sip of tap water. He hadn't learned anything else during this month in another world, and he didn't know how to pretend that it was absolutely professional in front of customers. Shhh, you don't need to speak, I know what you are here for. Qin Wen had an expression of seeing through everything, and the other party was worthy of being an inexperienced student. He was really stunned by him, staring at the unpredictable senior in front of him in a daze. Presumably, you came to me because of a strange thing that happened to you. Qin Wen's voice is like falling thunder, every word is beating directly into the boy's heart. He nodded like a chicken pecking rice, while Qin Wen smiled mysteriously. Nonsense. Anyone who has nothing strange about TMD will find an exorcism shop like this. But that's how it is said, the play still has to continue. The world is so big, you will be lucky to find me here. You have to know the vast crowds of people who can solve your problems. No more than 10, no, 3. Qin Wen seemed to think that 10 was a bit too many, so he changed his words to 3, while the boy on the opposite side was full of joy, as if he was rejoicing for his luck. Yes. Senior. I am special. I can see strange things and some strange powers. I dare not tell others. I am afraid of scaring them. But I can't control it. I am afraid of hurting. To others, I dare not play with them. The boy's tone became more and more aggrieved, as if he was about to cry. But in fact, Qin Wen is the one who wants to cry most. Your sister, I just want to make some money and be a salted fish. How can I get in touch with ghosts at every turn? I'm an ordinary person, can you give me a way to survive? Qin Wen was crying for his father and his mother, but the expression on his face became more and more unpredictable. He knew that the boy in front of him was the special guest that the computer said, but he did not dare to recruit. It's okay for the recruiting union to check the water meter. Secondly, who would dare to keep such a wicked one by his side? Well, as I thought, you can see the wandering souls in the world, right? Qin Wen made a sharp look, and the boy he saw had straight hair in his heart, always feeling that he was going to do something big. It's very common. You and I are the same kind of people. I can solve it for you, but first there is the most important thing. When the boy saw something happening, he looked at Qin Wen with bright eyes, as if he had seen a savior, but the real adult in front of him made his dream disillusioned. Are you rich? Qin Wen looked at the boy with scorching eyes. It was not that he was shameless, well, it was that he was shameless, but he was excusable. After all, he was starving to death, and the students had to earn money. I only brought 5 yuan. The boy grieved and took out a crumpled 5 yuan from his pocket. This was his pocket money for a week. But for Qin Wen, this will allow him to live a week at most. Hey! I am the person who looks at fate the most. We have the fate we met, but we don't have the life of a master and a disciple. Qin Wen pretentiously sighed deeply, as if disappointed with the boy. The boy also lowered his head low and prepared to collect the 5 yuan. Qin Wen was not happy now. Wait a minute, although we don't have the bond of master and apprentice, but we meet by the water, it is okay for me to point you. I am a person who does not pay attention to material things, but it can be said that a word is worthwhile. If you let me see your sincerity. Qin Wen squinted at the $5 in the boy's hand, full of hints. The boy looked at Qin Wen's humble expression, handed out another $5 in doubt, and was copied in his hand by the other party. Very good. A child can be taught. Qin Wen put away the 5 yuan with satisfaction, then cleared his throat and started the so-called pointing. Child, do you know that God is equal? Everyone has something he is good at. Some people are good at singing, calligraphy, and painting, some are good at punching and kicking. We just happen to have magical powers. www.mtlnovel.com is not worth showing off. What Qin Wen said is the Dao. He is an ordinary person, but he speaks as if he is really a world-class expert. It would be a pity that he should not be an MLM. You feel that you can't join the crowd. In fact, it's because you can't accept yourself. Don't use your talent as a capital to show off, but don't use it as a burden. It's a part of you. That's you. Learn to accept yourself before try to blend in with others. Qin Wen raised his head at a 45-degree angle, pretending to be deep, as if he had experienced some story. His back looked very lonely, and the boy looked more and more admired. The light in his eyes could not be covered. I see. Uncle deserves to be an expert. The boy seems to have learned a lot, even his introverted temperament has been weakened. Qin Wen looked at the boy with an expression that I am proud of you. If you understand, please come back. If there are people around you who have questions about yourself like you can ask them to come to me, but remember, you have to bring money. Qin Wen sat back behind the table, picked up the disposable paper cup again, and drank the tap water gracefully. Well, Uncle is worthy of being a senior, not only mature, but also in a good mood. The boy pushed the door and was about to leave, but before leaving, he looked up at the store again, his face full of admiration. Obviously there are monsters everywhere around me, they are all on their faces, and I can drink tea calmly. I will definitely learn from you. As soon as S words fell, the boy closed the door, and Qin Wen, the cup in his hand fell, and water spilled all over the floor. Qin Wen's unpredictable smile froze on his face, his back was cold, and he was almost urinating. It is no wonder that Qin Wen in this world always hit the evil before and died suddenly. This script seems to be wrong. Sao Nian. Stay. I'm testing you. Seeing that the boy was about to leave, Qin Wen hurried to catch up and stop him. Test? So you want to accept me as a disciple? The boy looked surprised, this sudden flip was too pleasant. I knew from the beginning that you were coming. I asked you for money to test your determination, to teach you the truth to see your understanding, and to leave you to see if our fate was in place. But you chose to leave. Qin Wen made a very heartbroken expression at this point, as if he couldn't bear to miss such a good seedling. But I love talent, fortune, as life, so I give you a chance. The evil spirits in the house are all specially arrested by me to test your talents. Now you will obliterate them all, succeed, and accept you as a disciple. Failure, fate is over. Qin Wen turned his hand back, pretending to be unpredictable, but his face was already sweating profusely, begging the little boy not to refuse, otherwise he would kneel down and beg others. Really? Good. I will finish it. Fortunately, the little boy was deceived. He didn't hesitate and ran back into the house. He stretched out his hand and there was a burst of Shinik energy, which seemed to illuminate the whole room briefly like lightning. Now even the waste Qin Wen saw the dirt thing. There are a total of 7 or 8, some of which are still human, but some have been completely deformed, strangely shaped, climbing on the wall or even hanging upside down on the roof. A pair of blood pupils stared at Qin Wen, and his bloodthirsty and strange eyes made him look all over his body. Cold. How did I live through the first month? Qin Wen clamped his legs and almost peed out, but the little boy had finished the work at this time, and almost instantly killed all the ghosts, and walked towards Qin Wen with an expression looking forward to the performance. Qin Wen wiped the sweat from his forehead and held back the urine that was about to leak out. With a calm expression on his face, he gave the boy a touch and a satisfied smile. The boy left his contact information, and then Qin Wen asked him to leave. After all, the other party was a student and could not wander outside for too long. However, he set a rule that the master's life is supreme, so he should be there whenever he calls. Then the 5 yuan pocket money every week is turned in as tuition. That's right, Qin Wen is such a dog. Hey, the system should be activated, it's really difficult. Qin Wen thought about what happened to him, and shook his head sadly. He sat at his desk, and the information interface on his computer had changed. Congratulations to the user for recruiting the first team member, the app has been activated. Unlock lottery function, unlock task function, unlock squad member list team members. Qin Wen sex, male age, 22 talent, unlucky Shinik, LV0 spirit, sprinkle salt evaluation, a waste, the panel is too bad, only use salt massage and mouth to drive away ghosts, make an exception to the only weak effect of salt as a spiritual skill, comfort users. You can shut up, you. Qin Wen looked at his message, his face blushed, but fortunately no one saw it, otherwise it would really die. Shangzhen sex, male age, 14 talent. Shinik? Spirit? Evaluation, the talent is strong, but it is a pity that you are not good at meeting people. Qin Wen only remembered when he saw Shan Xin's name. Before he asked the boy what he was called, he made him work for nothing. No, he even posted 5 yuan. If I can't do it anymore, I'd better switch to MLM. Qin Wen laughed at himself and opened the lottery system. The interface is very simple, with only a colorful disc and a pointer. The number of draws is marked below. One is rewarded when recruited to Shangzhen, and the other is rewarded when the app is activated. Pump. Prick him. Luck has fallen to the bottom, and everything you draw is a profit. Qin Wengsun mentioned it, bit his teeth, and ordered extraction. The turntable turned quickly, and Qin Wen's heartbeat also accelerated. Anything will do, the best life can be saved, no matter how good it is, you can sell money. The turntable slowed down slowly, and finally stopped on a blue area. Elementary inspiration type, talent function, it can initially perceive and affect the spiritual body, but because it is a beginner, the effect is extremely limited. Upgrade, 0% evaluation, from now on, you can feel them, but you also become more delicious. Seeing the information about the draw, Qin Wen was stunned for a second, then yelled. What is it? What does it mean to be more delicious? So I say that I have become a bait. Then I can feel that they have a fart. Qin Wen resisted the urge to smash the computer at this time, took a deep breath and adjusted his mentality. Hey, forget it, I was unlucky for a bunch of ghosts around, no matter how fragrant it is, it doesn't seem to make a difference. If there are too many lice, you are not afraid to bite. Qin Wen forcibly comforted himself, and at the same time he felt his own change, his body temperature seemed to drop a little, and the unknown area in his brain was opened. At the same time, he could feel that there was a spirit body in his body. But the spirit body didn't seem to have any malice, and it was very weak, and it seemed to be scarred. Did you protect me? Qin Wen sounded those fierce ghosts, and suddenly understood how he had lived through the first month, and Shangzhen came very immediately. Otherwise, in 2 days, I am afraid that the poor spirit body will disappear in smoke. Qin Wen also something will happen. The spirit body seemed to fall asleep, unable to perceive the outside world, and Qin Wen could only temporarily let it go. The second lottery draw began, and as the turntable slowly stopped, this time, the pointer stopped on the red with the smallest judging area. Snow Ruhua kind, Yinji growth progress, 10% roll, boarding the soul of Suisuero ghost letter, Suero flower, flesh and blood flower, broken limbs and legs were planted. Save her, kill her, don't take her home. Evaluation, it's good to sink into beauty, don't care what is buried under the flower. As soon as the item information appeared, Qin Wen felt something was wrong, his office work trembles suddenly, and then the elementary inspiration comes into play, and there is a sudden coldness in the large drawer at the bottom of the table. Breath. Qin Wen swallowed. He stood far away and opened the drawer with a broom. At this time, there was a drab flower pot inside, filled with soil, and there was a strange bud growing in the center. The tender bud is not like a plant, but like a phalanx, with fine hairs growing on the top, which is very permeating. What kind of underworld is this? Qin Wen waited for a while and found that there was no response, so he plucked up the courage to put the flower pot on the table and observed it carefully. He found some blood stains on the edge of the flower pot, which seemed to indicate that the flower was not watered. At the same time, the taskbar of the app suddenly lit up, and it seemed that there was a new reminder. Only then did Qin Wen retract his gaze from Shueruhua and clicked on the task. The user activates the mission system for the first time, and the difficulty of the first 3 nightmare missions decreases. Please cherish the opportunity. Congratulations to users for obtaining special items, unlocking related tasks, and completing tasks will receive special rewards. Miles task, the office left by the parents is very important, take care of the office and recruit a third member to make the office's popularity reach 30/1000 reward, cash 100,000, random talent. Random special guests, random special props. Reminder, the mileage is updated after the mission is completed, the mission is safe and the rewards are rich, and it records the growth of the user. Normal task, Shan Xin is a shy boy who is not good at communicating with people, helping your first team member to make the first friend. Reward, cash www.mtlnovel.com. Shangzhen's favor, random magic skills. Reminder, common tasks are updated weekly, uncompleted will be regarded as failure. And there is a chance to refresh again in the future nightmare mission. Love is the cruelest devil in the world. Reward, 10,000 cash, random talent, random spiritual skills, 500 firm popularity. Reminder, the nightmare mission is refreshed daily. If it is not accepted, it is considered as a failure if it is not completed or died, and the same mission will not be updated in the future. The difficulty of the first 3 nightmare missions is reduced, and the number of times will be consumed if you give up. Warn. Most nightmare tasks are extremely dangerous, please choose carefully. Special mission, Swearhua, find out the truth hidden in Fuiyuan apartment, but find out Suisuero's obsession. Reward, cash 5,000, remnant soul of Suisuero, mature Suero flower. Reminder, there is no time limit for special tasks, they will disappear after completion and will not be refreshed again updated so much all at once. Qin Wen has read the tips and rewards of each task carefully, and his heart is wavering. His coercive personality tells him not to pick it up, but his wallet and instant noodle box are urging him to rush to death. In the end, Qin Wen made up his mind. Hey, starve the courageous to death, who is afraid of whom? The nightmare mission has also been weakened. If you don't go for nothing, you can't go for nothing. Qin Wen cheered himself up while accepting the nightmare mission. After all, the mileage mission was not in a hurry. The bonus for ordinary missions was too small, and only nightmares and special missions met the requirements. The Nightmare Quest Flesh Potted Plant has been accepted. Please arrive at Fui Yuan apartment within 48 hours to investigate the truth of Suisuero's disappearance. Warning: different choices will bring about completely different results, please make every decision carefully. Hey? Why are you in Fui Yuan apartment? Qin Wen examined the questions carefully and found that the locations of the nightmare missions and special missions were in the Fui Yuan apartment. Are the two tasks linked? Qin Wen was a little panicked. Although the two tasks are much more convenient together and can get more rewards, but who can guarantee that this cheating software will not make people difficult? The task becomes difficult together. Isn't it a dead body? No. Consider to be comprehensive, and be careful to sail the boat for 10,000 years. Qin Wen thought calmly, judged calmly, and began to prepare for the first task. You may hit a ghost. Sprinkling salt has been judged to be a spiritual skill. Bring 3 packs of edible salt, not 5 packs. Peachwood sword, black donkey hoof. Forget it, it's not going to the grave and dumplings. I heard that the butcher the things you use can deter evil spirits, so go to the vegetable market and ask. Qin Wen spent a long time in the office, digging through boxes and cabinets, and finally sorted out a whole bag of things, like a turtle shell on his back. He originally wanted to bring the suero flower on the table with the pot, but after thinking about it, it was heavy and evil. It was a thing of the underworld alone. It was estimated that the harm was greater than the benefit when he brought it, so he finally chose to keep it and put it in his pocket. I took a small fruit knife with a sharp edge. Now that the time is approaching evening, Qin Wen is walking down the street with a bag of things on his back, attracting people's attention. The temperature was just right, and the wind blowing on his face was a little humid, which should have been very comfortable, but Qin Wen's inspiration always felt some weird breaths, which made him uncomfortable. It took nearly 20 minutes to get to the vegetable market. Qin Wen went straight to the butcher's shop and saw that the boss inside was quickly dismembering the raw chicken in front of him with a meat cleaver, and cut it into pieces with a few dollars. The blade of the knife seemed to have become brownish-black due to exposure to blood all the year round, let alone a ghost. Even Qin Wen, a living person who looked at it, panicked for a while. Hey! Boy, what kind of meat do you want? I don't use machines to kill and sell it in other stores. They are all sold on the same day. The boss was dressed in a dirty apron, 5 big and 3 thick, his forearm was almost as thick as Qin Wen's thigh, and it was all thick and long hair. At first glance, he was full of masculinity. Qin Wen's eyes hurt. Ah ha ha ha, I don't want meat, do you think you sell this knife? Qin Wen couldn't stand the opponent's deterrent, and his involuntary momentum was slightly lower. Knife? Why don't you stand in the way if you don't buy meat? Other guests want it. Damn crazy. The butcher shop owner seemed to be stabbed to the point of anger when he mentioned the knife, and he wanted to blast Qin Wen away. But Qin Wen was determined. After all, he might hit a ghost in this mission. He said he would not leave if he was not prepared. No, no, boss, I really want it. It's really impossible. I paid 100 and bought it. This knife is so old, at most 20 or 30 yuan. No one even takes it if you send it out. It's better to let you buy a new one. When he shouted a high price, Qin Wen's heart was bleeding. Now he has only a few $100s when he has emptied his underwear, but safety comes first, not to mention cash rewards for completing tasks. This is an investment, Qin Wen. I can only comfort myself in this way. 100. The boss was obviously moved. He weighed the butcher knife with the rotten wooden handle in his hand. He seemed to be thinking, but in the end he shook his head. It's really not good, guy. I'm going to do business today. I have this one here, and there are no knives sold around here. It really can't. You will come tomorrow, and I will bring you the new one tomorrow. Qin Wen was also very distressed. The task time was 48 hours in total. If I wait until tomorrow, wouldn't it be even worse if there is not enough time? He sighed and prepared to leave, but before leaving, Yu Guang suddenly saw the lace apron around the boss's belly. Boss, how do you sell this thing? In the end, Qin Wen had a verbal battle with the boss, witty words, and finally spent 5 yuan to buy the blood-stained lace apron. The original color of the apron was no longer visible, it was all dry dark brown blood, and a strong blood. The butcher knife is not good, the butcher's belly band should be similar. In a sense, it should be more deterrent. Qin asked the apron on his opponent, the more satisfied he was, and he almost kissed him, so he surrounded him directly. At the moment he was dressed, a sigh of evil aura engulfed Qin Wen's body, and the uneasy feeling that had originally enveloped him suddenly disappeared, as if the aura overwhelmed his own scent, let alone it's a ghost. Even passers-by respond. Wonderful. Qin Wen just walked down the street wearing a blood apron, carrying a huge backpack that looked like a turtle shell on his back. How funny. He even stopped a few cars and no one dared to take him, for fear of getting mad, until he hid behind a tree, and when he saw someone getting out of the car, he rushed out and rushed into the car. Then he got on the road, and the driver looked at him. Cold sweat, from time to time through the rearview mirror to look to the back seat, but never dared to talk. Qin Wen was also very happy, and began to search for relevant information about Fui Yuan apartment with his mobile phone, and it really made him find something. A few years ago, Fui Yuan apartment was still a green community. It was famous for its elegant environment where every family planted potted plants, but something happened after that. There was a woman who disappeared. The police investigated for more than a full year without results. The case is still pending. What was even more weird was what happened after that. One night a year later, a family suddenly ran out of the house screaming as if they had hit a ghost, and there were many similar things after that. The confessions of all the parties were surprisingly consistent. A woman wearing a blood-stained white coat with many wounds all over appeared suddenly, smashed the potted plants at home, crying to retrieve her body, and some even took pictures of weird pictures. There is no female ghost in white clothes in the picture, only floating potted plants, which eventually fell to the ground. After that, there was an urban legend called flesh potted plants nearby. According to legend, in that community, anyone who raised potted plants at home would be found by a female ghost. No one in Fui Yuan apartment dared to raise potted plants anymore, and many people moved out, and the housing prices there dropped again and again. It's a bit ruthless. It seems that the preparation is still not enough. Qin Wen looked at a piece of information, cold sweat crawling all over his forehead. Why don't you call Shangzhen? It's better to be ashamed than to lose your life. Qin Wen took out his mobile phone, but took it back at the last second after dialing the Shangzhen phone. Sure enough, even if the dog is like Qin Wen, he was embarrassed to trouble a child who admired himself all the time. Fake, seeing is believing, as long as I don't bump into her personally, I am a firm materialist. Qin Wen secretly cheered himself up. The car ran for a full half an hour. The driver's old man reminded Qin Wen to be cautious when he arrived at the station, and he didn't dare to make an offer until Qin Wen got off the car. Big brother. 33 yuan and 7. Oh good, wait a minute. Qin Wen stretched out his hand to pay for the money, and did not forget to smile politely at the uncle, but with this smile, the uncle slammed on the accelerator like an electric shock, and the taxi engine roared and threw it out all the way, leaving only Qin Wen holding the change was messy in the wind alone. "Fuck you." Qin Wen looked suspicious, but the other party took the initiative not to collect the money. If there is a good man who does not take advantage of the bad guy, Qin Wen took a trip to the overlord car comfortably. Right in front of Fui Yuan apartment, Qin Wen raised his leg and walked into the door. Although the security guard kept staring at him, he didn't dare to stop him. For one thing, he didn't seem to be annoyed. He just kept holding the walkie-talkie and muttered, "Let the units pay attention to a dangerous person in the community." Qin Wen didn't care so much either. He walked on the sidewalk and carefully observed the surroundings. As it was said on the internet, the original green community was barely green at this time except for some trees, and there were few people in the past. They are all old men and women, and there are not many young people. It is estimated that they either moved out or stayed at home. Qin Wen walked slowly, and finally saw the first young man when he arrived at Building 3. "Grow flowers." Looking from a distance, the man squatted on the ground, holding a small shovel, as if he was burying something. Only when he walked in, he realized that he was planting flowers. The small wreath was more than 10 square meters long, and he planted an unknown flower. The flower was turquoise blue and had a misty beauty. It was obviously beautiful, but it was forcibly planted by a man in this place where there were no plants. A small piece of it seemed a bit lonely, but the man was enjoying it, as if he was imprisoned by the fragrance of flowers, with nothing else in his eyes. This man is a bit familiar. With the lessons learned from the driver's old man, Qin Wen dared not stand too close for fear of scaring him away. From a distance, the man had pale skin, messy hair, and a small mole on the corner of his eyes. Since the other party was much thinner than in the report at the time, and his temperament changed drastically, it took a long time for Qin Wen to recognize that the man was the person involved in the previous disappearance. The name of the missing person was Su Suero, a very beautiful woman, and her lover, named Lu Yu, was exactly that kind of man with flowers. Qin Wen wanted to find a chance to talk to him, but without a proper reason, he couldn't come up and ask if you had bury your lover in a flower pot, right? Don't talk to you, you will be good temper unless you shovel to death. You. Turn around. Where did you come from? Just when Qin Wen was distressed about how to proceed, a nervous and young voice suddenly sounded from behind him. Qin Wen looked back and found that it was a young security guard who looked at best. At the age of 12 or 13, he was holding chili spray and watching Qin Wen warily wearing a blood-stained apron. Oh! Good opportunity! Qin Wen smiled slightly, and the MLM genius went online again. He put on a majestic and mature expression, and slowly put his fingers in front of his mouth, letting the little security guard be quiet and calm down. "Shh! Don't scare away the suspect." Qin Wen's voice is low and solemn, as if performing some secret mission. And the little security guard was also taken aback when he heard this. The suspect? Who? The one who grows the flowers? You are obviously more dangerous than others, okay. Who are you? Why is there all blood on the apron? Although the little security guard thought Qin Wen was weird, he still let go of his vigilance. Qin Wen smiled slightly when he saw it, and took out a plastic toy police badge, with a Piggy Peppa printed at the center, and quickly shook it in front of the little security guard, and then put it away. "My name is Qin Wen, I am law enforcement in plain clothes, and this apron is just my disguise." Qin Wen made a promise, his expression was extremely confident, and the little security guard was also taken aback, glanced at the other person's look. Plain clothes? Camouflage? He was full of question marks, but when he thought of what the other party was showing skillfully, although he moved too fast and didn't see it clearly, it seemed like a police badge, and he relaxed again. After all, there shouldn't be any lunatics posing as plain clothes to enforce the law, right? Too fake and too deliberate. Then it can only be true. The little security guard put away the spray, and was too embarrassed to ask the police officer in front of him for the badge to check it. I think no lunatic should dare to play like this, right? Maybe? You are the security guard here, you should know the past cases. Qin Wen's expression is serious, as if he really has the majesty of law enforcement. His tone is beyond doubt. I am new here, but I have heard that you have investigated Mr. Lu and said he is innocent. The little security guard was suppressed by Qin Wen's aura, and he became more convinced of Qin Wen's identity, but the blood-stained apron was so eye-catching, he couldn't help but glance at it. Humph, don't look at it, this is a disguise. The so-called plain clothes does not mean wearing ordinary clothes, but means blending into the crowd. Qin Wen saw the other party's doubts, and in order to be more confident about his identity, he began to lie. This apron looks very eye-catching at first glance, but when you think about it the other way round, who would have thought that I was law enforcement in plain clothes? I would only think that I was a neuropath. Even if I felt dangerous, I would not think about law enforcement. I would often be surprised. The little security guard saw what Qin Wen was talking about. It seemed that there was a secret truth. It didn't sound right at first, but after thinking about it carefully, it seemed that there was nothing wrong with it. He had completely believed Qin Wen's words in his heart. Humph, this is called reverse thinking, learn something. Qin Wen nodded his head satisfied when he saw that Xiao Bao's eyes were no longer suspicious. You tell me all the information you know about Lu Yu. I still have questions about the case of that year. If your information can help solve the case, you will be credited with the first-class work. The little security guard heard that he could help solve the case, and he immediately headed for it. He was extremely diligent and told everything he knew. I have just been working here for less than 3 months, but I have also heard a lot about Mr. Lu, as well as the urban legends that made a lot of noise in those days. The little security guard is very nagging, with a serious expression. In fact, people have also said before that the entire case may have been self-directed and acted by Mr. Lu, because the hidden good police did not find out. But after a long time, the residents here have seen that Mr. Lu is not that kind of person. He is not only friendly, he often helps the neighbors in the neighborhood, and he is also very infatuated. In the beginning, you actively cooperated with your investigation. After that, you were helpless and you were ready to give up him or look for him everywhere. It is said that you have posted tens of thousands of missing persons notices, and you plant a flower in the community every day, which is said to be his lover's favorite. The little security guard sighed, and looked at the man who planted flowers not far away with some sympathy. Oh, by the way, Suisuero also has a younger sister who seems to be called Suisweking. She looks a lot like her sister and she is also a nice person. Before, she often brought things to visit Mr. Lu, and sometimes gave some to others, but at the time I still did not work here. The little security guard seemed to remember something, and suddenly added. But that was all a long time ago. Police officers should have heard of what happened afterwards. The community was haunted and the young people ran away. Those who are still here are either old people who can live for a few years, or they really can't move. I started. But Mr. Lu hasn't left. He thinks that the female ghost is his lover. Others don't dare to grow things anymore. Instead, he has grown more vigorously, hoping that his lover can go home and have a look. Speaking of this, the little security guard sighed deeply, saying that he had never seen a man who was so infatuated with love. It is said that the female ghost would smash the potted plant and was looking for her body. Has the police checked it? Qin Wen thought about it carefully, and the more he thought about it, the more he felt that Lu Yu seemed to have a problem. Hey? Shouldn't you know better than me? The little security guard glanced suspiciously at Qin Wen. Qin Wen immediately responded that he had said the wrong thing, but he didn't panic at all. Instead, he was relaxed and went on. I just took over this case. I don't know what happened before, so I came to ask you. That's it. The little security guard believed it and didn't think too much. Someone came to investigate before, but Mr. Lu strongly opposed it and made a big fire. I heard that a police officer accidentally smashed a pot of flowers, and Mr. Lu rushed to fight them angrily. In the end, it was his lover's sister who tried her best to reconcile the matter. Since it is all over, it must have been found out. Qin Wen nodded and sorted out all the information in his mind. Although he looked confident on the surface, in fact, he was completely messed up in his mind. He was really not a detective. Very good, thank you for your cooperation. Oh yes, what is your name? If the information you provide is helpful, I will ask my colleagues to give you penance and bonuses. Qin Wen couldn't think of a reason, so he didn't want to think about it. He turned his head and held the hand of the little security guard with admiration, like an old cotter who was investigating. My name is Zhang Wenming, I will be satisfied if I can help you, there is no need for bonus penance or anything. The little security guard smiled very honestly, he was indeed just out of good intentions. Good quality comrade Shu Zinfan. Then don't give it. Qin Wen laughed more happily when he heard this. Originally, he thought that if he really solved the case, he would have a bonus for the other party. Now it's all his own. What? Xiao Zhang hadn't reacted yet. Qin Wen immediately began to ask for help, and he planned to observe Lu Yu's side. By the way, which floor does Lu Yu live in? You take me to see the landlord, I have something to ask. Okay. Come with me. Xiao Zhang didn't bother, and enthusiastically took the fake law enforcement Qin Wen to the recreation room of the community, and did not forget to introduce Qin Wen to various facilities on the way. Qin Wen had a good impression of Zhang Wenming. The other party was very enthusiastic. Even if he was wearing a loose uniform, he could see the contours of his muscles. His physical fitness was absolutely strong, and he was young and yang. If it is possible, Qin Wen really wants to recruit him to the office to be his bodyguard. Hey! Forget it, I've tightened my belt and lived a life. I can't rush to find a bodyguard. Qin Wen sighed, and the two soon came to the recreation room of the community, which was very noisy, full of the shouts of grandpas and aunts, and the continuous sound of rubbing mahjong. Uncle Zhao, someone wants to see you. Xiao Zhang is very sensible, knowing that plainclothes law enforcement requires privacy, so he didn't explain who he wanted to see, but went straight to ask him out. Uncle Zhao is a bit hunched. He looks very low, with pale skin and few hairs, but his eyes are deep, his temperament is calm, and he can see people who have seen strong winds and waves. Hiss, it looks like a human being, my Peppa badge is probably unstoppable. Qin Wen was nervous, but there was always a smile on his face, without showing the slightest panic. Xiao Zhang, you go to work first, I will talk to Uncle Zhao. Qin Wen winked at Zhang Wenming, and the other party left sensibly and didn't forget to leave his contact information. What's the matter, boy? Is there anything wrong? There are still a bunch of beautiful women waiting for me to play mahjong. Let's talk about it if we have something. Uncle Zhao's voice is very steady, not like an old man, but more like an old and strong middle-aged man. Qin Wen glanced at the three aunts who were looking at the mahjong table in the entertainment room, and couldn't help admiring the old man's sturdy health. Ah, such an old man, I am a famous exorcist. Qin Wen no longer claimed to be law enforcement in plain clothes, but directly took out the business card of his office and handed it to Uncle Zhao. I have heard the legend here a long time ago, and I did feel the evil aura. Qin Wen's righteous words, coupled with his business card and blood-stained apron, are indeed the same thing. The exorcist has not run away, but the word famous is open to question. I believe you are also very troubled. The house in your hand cannot be sold or rented out. I can try to exorcise you, but you need to provide the room next to Mr. Lu Yu. It does not take long, at most 2 nights. Qin Wen has a sincere tone and sincere eyes. I believe this is nothing to you. I just borrow an unoccupied room for 2 nights, and I will try my best to exorcise you. If it succeeds, I believe that your house's reputation will gradually rise and it will be able to sell. A good price. What Qin Wen said is justified and well-founded, and Uncle Zhao has indeed begun to think about this matter. www.mtlnovel.com. Well, you have a point, but why do you want to tell me this? It's fine if you just say that you want to rent it. I can't not rent it to you. Uncle Zhao smiled, and Qin Wen was speechless. He couldn't say that he wanted to prostitute for nothing because he didn't have money. Wouldn't his identity as a famous exorcist be self-defeating? Ha 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 ha, young man, I know what you mean. Uncle Zhao saw Qin Wen's embarrassment and laughed, but he didn't mean to mock, instead he threw the key directly to him. Go, 1304 on the 13th floor of Building 3, that Lu Yu is at 1303, and I won't charge you any money. Uncle Zhao looked at him with a smile. This house was originally meant to be used by my child for marriage, but those things happened, let alone getting married, and no one bought it at a low price. Boy, if you solve it, don't say I don't charge for renting this house, I will pay for it. We'll pay extra for exorcism. But, if I find out that you haven't done anything, but simply cheated, the old man won't forgive you. Uncle Zhao smiled slyly and stuffed Qin Wen's business card into his pocket. Good fellow, this is a military order. Qin Wen suddenly felt stressed, but his face was still full of confidence. Don't worry about it. If it fails, I will run into ghosts forever. Qin Wen made a vow, and Uncle Zhao also nodded. This oath was poisonous enough to prove his determination. Okay. Vigorous. The old man is waiting for your news. Uncle Zhao left with satisfaction, and continued to play mahjong with the ants. But he doesn't know, Qin Wen's oath is no different from that fart. He will run into ghosts all his life? This has long been destined. Qin Wen took the key and returned to Building 3. At this time, Lu Yu was no longer planting flowers downstairs, and he did not know where he went. Qin Wen leaned close to the flower garden, carefully admiring his inspiration. The flowers seemed to have some cold air, the petals bloomed like fireworks, but the stamens were entangled, black and white, and looked like a dim one from a distance. Pupil. The flower stalk has a bulge like a knuckle, and it also has hair like black hairs, which is very similar to the buds of Swearhua. This Lu Yu, there really is a problem. Qin Wen didn't believe that there was such a coincidence. The flowers planted by the other party were almost the same as the Swearo flowers given by the system. It only showed that the other party had something to hide and needed to find out by himself. It was very late now, and the lights on the roadside were all on. Qin Wen stopped delaying and went up to the 13th floor. Although there are bad rumors about Fui Yuan apartment, after all, it has a good reputation in the past, and the environment is naturally first class. The corridors are full of light and the floor is clean, but it is quiet, as if only Lu Yu lived on the whole floor. One person. There is something. There really is something. Qin Wen had just walked to 1307, obviously still a long way from 1303, and already felt a cold breath, as if he was in an iron coffin, breathless. Qin Wen swallowed and tightened the blood-stained apron. He also took the torn bag of salt in his hand, ready to throw it out at any time. The hilt of the peachwood sword was also exposed outside the bag for easy grabbing. I knew Shangzhen was here, how can there be so many things? Qin Wen was extremely regretful, but it was too late. I am afraid that Shangzhen is about to rest at this time. He does not live alone, and his family will definitely not let him go out late at night. Qin Wen paced slowly, and it took a full 5 minutes to stand in front of 1304's door. At this time, the cold feeling became clearer, and he could hear Lu Yu hitting something in the room, like a hammer nailing a wooden board. The sound of percussion is endless. It seems there is no danger. Qin Wen felt that the coldness next door might not be a conscious ghost, but was very similar to the flower downstairs, and did not fluctuate because of his arrival. How much did he grow at home? Qin Wen breathed a sigh of relief, opened the door and entered the house, not forgetting to sprinkle the whole bag of salt that he opened in his hands on the door, which is said to be able to ward off evil spirits. Very good, just wait here, maybe you can find something. Qin Wen found a bedroom next to 1303, sat down against the wall, and did not forget to set Zhang Wenming, Shangzhen and the alarm phone to one-click calls. Near the fire, at least it can help collect a corpse. Qin Wen placed the peachwood sword and salt with his back against the wall, and began to quietly listen to the actions of the next door, but there was nothing but the beating sound. The other party is like a machine, without fatigue. He knocked it out for 2 hours without knowing what he was doing. Qin Wen's spirit has been tense. Now he is sitting in the room with the right temperature, and the beating sound of the next room is regular. He gradually relaxes and falls asleep accidentally. In his dream, he came to a room, which was dim, narrow and suffocating, like a basement. Qin Wen was lying on an iron table in the center of the room, unable to move or speak, like a decomposing corpse, just lying there. After an unknown period of time, the basement door was opened, and a dark shadow walked in. Qin Wen felt an extremely cordial feeling, as if that dark shadow was his closest and most trusted person. I love you very much, but you don't care, I am in pain, but you can't see it. The dark shadow muttered to himself. The emotion contained in that tone was very complicated, and it was hard to say in a few words. So you have to become a flower, the flower is beautiful, I love the flower is very fragrant, it fills the nasal cavity, the flower is very good, the flower can't speak. The shadow was intoxicated in his own world, and took the bone saw next to him in his hand. Qin Wen couldn't see or shout, he could only feel the pain in his heart coming from his wrist, but he was like a broken puppet, at the mercy of others. The sawbone sound stopped, and the black shadow held something in his hand and held it in front of Qin Wen. Look, the flowers are blooming, how beautiful they are. It was a woman's severed hand, very slender, but there was no blood dripping out of the fracture, but it was gradually squirming, beginning to sprout and blooming one after another fleshy flowers, and those that Lu Yu planted generally the same, but not turquoise blue, but ferocious, blood red. What? In the next second, Qin Wen woke up suddenly and fell off the chair with a cold sweat. He instinctively raised his right arm to check, and when he saw the fifth girl still safely connected to his wrist, he breathed a sigh of relief from the heart. Have a nightmare? But so real. Qin Wen was a little scared, the flower was so weird that I could see it in his dreams. Hey? The beating stopped. Qin Wen calmed down, only to find that the knocking sound of the next door had disappeared at this time, and it became very silent, not even the sound of footsteps. It's past 10 o'clock, maybe I fell asleep. Qin Wen struggled for a while, and finally made up his mind, wanting to open the window and enter the other party's home to find out. This may be the only way to find out the truth. Qin Wen walked to the window and glanced at the situation outside. This is the 13th floor. You can enter the crematorium directly after you fall down. But fortunately, there are a lot of footholds. The nearest two windows are only 3 or 4 meters apart. 2 of the air conditioning cabinets can be used as a foothold. As long as you are careful, the problem is not big. Qin Wen grabbed the window and was about to step out, but there were footsteps in the corridor. He walked all the way to 1303 and knocked on Lu Yu's door, making Qin Wen hurriedly retracted, if he managed to turn it over. In the past, it was embarrassing to have big eyes and small eyes with others. Brother-in-law, are you better? I brought you some supplements. There was a woman's voice in the corridor, very clear, but the mood seemed very sad and a little depressed. Brother-in-law? Swecking. Qin Wen hurried to the door and peeked through the cat's eyes, but he couldn't see his face from this angle. He could only vaguely see the big plastic bag that the other party was holding, which was full of supplements. At this time, footsteps sounded next door to Qin Wen, and Lu Yu opened the door, but said nothing. "Brother-in-law, you should really come out now, don't be restrained by the past." Su Sweking's tone was very tactful, with a trace of haggard. "Sister, she wouldn't want to see you like this, you are my only family, cheer up, please." After saying this, the corridor fell into silence, no one spoke, Qin Wen could even hear the breathing of the two. Lu Yu was silent for a while, but Qin Wen vaguely felt that Lu Yu was not speechless, but refused to communicate, as if he knew what he was doing and no one would understand, so he was more lazy to say it. In the end, the two of them stood in a stalemate for more than a minute. Lu Yu accepted the tonic from Su Sweking with a blank face, nodded and thanked him, and then closed the door, shutting Su Sweking out alone. Qin Wen witnessed all this. Su Sweking stood at the door for a while, Qin Wen could hear the sound of sobbing, and then she left. Qin Wen saw the other's side face through the cat's eyes. It was really beautiful and gentle, very similar to her sister, but it looked a bit too much to say that it was similar, it was exactly the same face. Su Sweking seemed to feel her gaze. When she passed the door of 1304, she suddenly stopped and turned her head to look at the cat's eye. She gradually moved forward, and her right eye was put on the cat's eye to take a closer look. Qin Wen did not dare to move. If he hides now, the other party will be able to notice the change in the light in the cat's eye. Although living here is not impossible for people to know, but so with multiple rooms, he only lives here. www.mtlnovel.com to let the parties know how much they will be stunned. Su Sweking's eyes were beautiful, but because she had just finished crying, she was bloodshot at this time, and she left without looking at it for a long time. Only Qin Wen began to pick up the known information. The name of the mission is Sweruhua, and the flowers Lu Yu planted are very similar to those given to me by the system. The dream just now was also very strange. The flowers that grew out of the broken arm were also Sweruhua. Could it be that Su Swero was holding the dream? Qin Wen thought about everything carefully, and suddenly, he remembered the prompt given by the nightmare mission. Love is the cruelest devil in the world. This sentence means something, is it a reminder? The more Qin Wen thinks about it, the more he thinks it is possible. In addition, Sweruhua's item introduction also contains similar information, like a song. It's just that what the so-called ghost letter is, I don't know. Qin Wen racked his brains to connect all the information, but because of insufficient IQ, the more he thought about it, the more confused he became. At this moment, a cell phone ringing sounded from the next door, which seemed to be Lu Yu's text message. Then there was a sound of tidying up, and the footsteps were quickly and messy. What's the matter? Going out in the middle of the night? Qin Wen temporarily left other things behind and listened carefully to the movement next door. Lu Yu sorted it out quickly, and then hurried out, not knowing what to do. Qin Wen saw Lu Yu's expression through the cat's eyes for a moment, excited? Can't wait? Qin Wen remembers that many people said that Lu Yu had become less talkative since Su Swero disappeared, but why did he leak such a happy expression at this time? And it's still in the middle of the night. Good opportunity. Regardless of other things, Qin Wen only knows one thing. There is no one in Lu Yu's home now. When should you wait for petty theft? A godsend. Hey! 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 Qin Wen! Relax. You can. Qin Wen stood on the edge of the window, his poked out. He took off his backpack and put a bag of salt in his pocket, with a peachwood sword in his waistband, and he was wearing a blood-stained apron. The height of the 13th floor made him afraid to look down at all. The cool breeze behind him and his own imagination were scary enough. He clung to the window, and tentatively stepped on the air conditioner with his right foot. Fortunately, there were no people in this community. The rest of the people didn't dare to go out in the middle of the night. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain. Qin Wen was sweating profusely, not tired but scared. Your sister? I don't know if I don't try it, I'm a little afraid of heights. At this time, he was very close to the window of 1304, and he could reach it with his hand. Fortunately, the other party did not lock the window. If he locked it, there would be no way. It's almost, a little. Qin Wen scratched the wall with his left hand and tried his best to lean, but the tip of his right finger was so close to reach the window. In the end, he had no choice but to take off the direct foot muscles and hold it in his hand before reluctantly opening the window. The top opened, and climbed into the house dangerously and dangerously. As soon as he entered the room, he was enveloped by the thick gloom. The richness is completely 2 levels from the next door. If 1304 is air, then it is simply liquid here. Can people live in this place? Qin Wen covered his nose with a face of resistance. Not only is the inspiration stimulated, but the environment here can't even stand the body. Flowers are planted everywhere, and there are not many places to stay. The fragrance of this kind of flower is originally very elegant, but at this time, the amount is too large, and the scent is super pungent. And the weird black and white stamens radiated a faint light in the dark night with insufficient light, as if they were staring at the uninvited guest Qin Wen. What kind of underworld stuff is this? I'm so panicked. Qin Wen pinched his nose, slowly passed the blue flowers that were growing everywhere, and walked into the living room. There are no special places in the living room. The coffee table, sofa, dining table, and TV are just a bit messy, full of garbage and leftover dishes from takeout, but this is also in line with the image of a forever loved one. There is nothing wrong with it. Qin Wen simply turned around in the living room and opened a door casually. It seemed to be arranged as a computer room. There was a toilet, a computer desk, and a desktop with a tall configuration on it. The machine, but the dust on it is very thick. I don't know how long it has been since the machine has been turned on. There is a group photo of 3 people on the computer desk. Qin Wen didn't dare to take it up and look at it, fearing that Lu Yu would be suspicious when he noticed that the position moved. The photo was of sisters Suisuero and Lu Yu. The 3 of them laughed very happily. Suisuero was holding Lu Yu's arm, Lu Yu stood in the middle, and Suisweking was eating ice cream on the other side and compared to scissor hands. It seems to be a photo from a long time ago. At that time, they were still a little green. Lu Yu put his arm around Suisuero and put his other hand on Suisweking's head like a big brother. At that time, Suisweking looked very different from Suisuero's style. Suisuero was intellectual and gentle, while she was a little bit like a little sister, with smoky makeup. There is only one photo in the entire computer room related to the case, and the others are some daily necessities. Qin Wen casually took a look at it and left, opening the door directly opposite. This side is next to 1304, and depending on the location, it was in this room when Lu Yu hit something. Fuck! As soon as Qin Wen opened the door, he was covered by the fragrance of flowers rushing towards his face, but before he could scold him, the scene in front of him made him speechless. Flowers, 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 there are flowers everywhere, the walls are covered with mud, and the weird blue flowers are covered, the ground is also covered with a layer of mud, and even the ceiling is covered with blue flowers. This bedroom has no windows and no lights, but the flowers themselves emit a faint light, making the room very bright. Even the only bed in it is surrounded by flowers, like a lone boat floating in the sea of flowers. Some lonely, some weird. He sleeps here every day. Qin Wen swallowed involuntarily. This is no longer infatuation, but madness. Qin Wen nodded his foot and moved gently, afraid of stepping on these weird flowers. Suddenly, Qin Wen noticed that beside the bed, there were a few flowers slightly higher than the others, as if something was buried underneath. Qin Wen picked one casually, walked over carefully, and gently peeled away the dirt there, for fear of injury. To the planted flowers. He pulled a few times, and dug out a very strange-shaped wooden box. The box was very new and the wooden boards were still shiny, as if they had just been made. What? What did he do with the box? It was buried in the bedroom. Qin Wen opened the wooden box carefully. Suddenly, an extremely pungent stench spread over the surface. After Qin Wen saw the contents of the box, he also had a chill, and his back became cold, almost limp in the flowers. Severed limb. This is a coffin. He sleeps in a pile of coffins. Qin Wen instinctively stayed away from the wooden box. In the Yu reading www.yuyukanshu.com box was a stump. It was a person's palm without fingers. The flesh had long been corrupted, leaving only dry, rotten skin and blackened bones. Qin Wen's breathing increased, his heart beating violently, he could even feel the rhythm of blood in his body, from head to toe, even his eyes were trembling crazily. This lunatic! It really is him! Qin Wen had cold hands and feet. It was the first time he saw this kind of battle in his previous life or in your life. At this time, he had not fainted and he was considered to have a good psychological quality. Qin Wen took a deep breath, adjusted his mood, and forcibly calmed down a bit. He counted the bumps around him. This room is not big, there are actually 13 bags. In other words, poor Suisuero was at least divided into 13 pieces by this lunatic. This is not a sea of flowers, this is a tomb of flowers, there are tomb bags everywhere. He slept in the burial ground where his lover was buried, it was so poetic. Qin Wen hurriedly closed the coffin with the corpse on it, and recovered it with soil, not forgetting to insert the flowers back in place. He doesn't want to worry about that much now, it's true that he should leave this ghost place and call the police. When he thought of someone making a coffin in the middle of the night, Qin Wen felt a chill. He thought he was repairing the shoe cabinet or something. Qin Wen exited the bedroom, closed the door, and prepared to go out from the front door. But at this moment, his inspiration seemed to be stimulated, and he reacted violently. Qin Wen stayed on the spot, his hair exploded, his spinal cord seemed to be filled with ice, unable to move, and goosebumps covered his whole body. Something found him and was watching him. This feeling is unclear, but Qin Wen knows that it must be the line of sight, and not the line of human sight. Qin Wen looked at the empty living room. There was nothing in his eyes, but a certain area of his brain was giving a crazy warning. Papa! A strange sound sounded, as if a foot had stepped into the puddle, but the liquid in the puddle became thicker and the sound was duller. At the third door, just blocking the door. At this time, Qin Wen's blood seemed to have lost its temperature and dropped to freezing point. The weird sound was just outside the door he hadn't opened, as if reminding himself to pass, and the door to go out was next to the third door. We'll definitely pass there. I really thought I was the brain-dead protagonist in a horror movie. I'm just going for a fool, I can't walk through the door and climb the window. Qin Wen stared at the place where the noise was making, slowly raising his feet, and moving slowly toward the balcony. Papa 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 papa. As if seeing Qin Wen's intention to escape, the weird voice suddenly sounded quickly, and getting closer and closer, something was quickly running towards him. Ah, your sister's Laozi fights with you. Qin Wen was so frightened by the rushing sound that he drew out the mahogany sword from his waistband as a punch and kick. The mahogany sword slammed into the air, but the eggs didn't work. The voice rushed to Qin Wen 3 meters away and then stopped. Qin Wen's heart seemed to have gone through a life and death crisis. He was afraid of his heart. At that moment, his brain suddenly became clear, and his inspiration suddenly burst, and it was vague. He saw the appearance of the ghost, just as Shangzhen felt when he was exterminating the spirit. Just as in the urban legend, it was a beautiful woman wearing a blood-stained white dress. It was just a moment, before Qin Wen had time to look carefully, the inspiration disappeared again, and nothing was seen. Stop it! Why? Qin Wen looked suspicious, he held the peachwood sword in his hand, he didn't think it was his sharp swordsmanship that scared the opponent away. Apron? It really works. Qin Wen lowered his head and glanced at his apron exuding evil spirits. He really didn't look away. If it weren't for this apron, I'm afraid that when I arrived next door, this ghost was attracted by my own fragrance, and now it is even more so that the evil spirits can't get close. Full deterrence. The value of these $5. Of course, it is impossible for Qin Wen to let this opportunity to escape. He immediately raised his foot to the door, but the weird footsteps also made a noise, and he walked directly to the door and blocked it, as if he did not want Qin Wen to go out. Fuck, is this determined to keep me? Even though Qin Wen had an apron, he didn't dare to be presumptuous. Who knows whether the other party is afraid or responding? If it is just responding, if he irritates that thing, he will definitely die. But he doesn't want to climb the window to go back. There is still a female ghost in the room who is staring at her. If she is disturbed while climbing a wall outside, it must be very dangerous. Qin asked a little bit entangled. The former is a female ghost and the latter is a tall building. Which one has a lower chance of death? But fortunately, the sudden change made him no longer need to hesitate. There was a sound of footsteps in the corridor, and Lu Yu came back. That's too late. Qin Wen's scalp exploded suddenly. Even in the face of female ghosts, he still has an apron to defend himself, but facing a lunatic who mutilated his lover, he had no confidence. Qin Wen stopped hesitating, turned his head and ran to the window. Fortunately, the female ghost was silent at this time, and there was no interference. Qin Wen turned out the window directly and stepped onto the air conditioning case. NS. However, his speed was too fast, and he didn't step on it firmly, slipped and slipped. Fortunately, he instinctively grabbed the iron frame under the main unit, otherwise he fell off. Squeak! The air conditioner case creaked, and Lu Yu was already opening the door at this time. If he enters the house and sees his window open and sees Qin Wen, it will be dangerous. Nima, I have to work out in the future, a pull-up is so terrible. Qin Wen in this world is not physically strong, so he did a pull-up and climbed up after trying his life. At this moment, Lu Yu also had a warm smile on his face. He came back with a pot of plants, saw the open window, frowned and walked over. He stretched out his head and looked out the window. Qin Wen jumped into 1304 just before his death, avoiding Lu Yu's sight. I didn't close the window. Lu Yu seemed to be in a good mood. He didn't care about these details and began to open the package he took back. Hey, almost. Qin Wen was panting. He didn't think too much about it just now. Looking back on it, he was really scared for a while. Any mistake may cause his own death on the spot. Nightmare mission, really not covered. Qin Wen sighed, picked up the phone decisively, and called the police. Hello, this is the Public Security Bureau, how can I help you? Hello, I am a tenant of Huiyuan community. I live in 1304. The neighboring tenant has been beating most of the night, and there is still a strong smell coming. I don't think it's right. Qin Wen has already figured out the wording. He cannot directly say that he found the murderer of the case, otherwise the incident of his illegal entry into the room will be exposed, so he must hint and let the other party discover the truth for himself. Well, you should contact the property about this matter. Although it is said that there is something to do with law enforcement, the neighbor relationship still needs to be adjusted by yourself. Uncle Law Enforcement felt that there was no need to go to the police for such trivial matters. Qin Wen spent a lot of effort to persuade the other party, and in the end only sent a police car. The three law enforcement officials didn't pay much attention to it. They didn't realize that this person was wrong until Lu Yu insisted on not letting them into the house. Pressed on the ground. Thank you for your help, let us solve a pending case, how do you call it? The head of the law enforcement had a serious expression. He called more law enforcement officers and started investigating the scene. Finally, a total of 14 corpses were found in the house. Lu Yu took one back after he went out, but that was still not all. These could only be pieced together. Part of Suisuero's limbs showed how bad the modus operandi was. My name is Qin Wen, I don't need to thank you, I will be content with a bonus of $1,000. Qin Wen's face is not so thick, but in his eyes, he almost died. This is a reward he deserves. There will definitely be rewards, but we need you to go back with us to give a confession first. It's just a routine, but I hope to understand. The law enforcement name who talked to Qin Wen was Jiuxian. He was in his 40s or 50s. He had been a policeman for more than 10 years and was a veteran. Qin Wen couldn't refuse, and got into the police car obediently. At this time, the sky was already dark. Qin Wen was sitting in the police car. He saw Zhang Wenming, who was dumbfounded and watching the excitement not far away. He smiled and gave him a thumbs up. www.mtlnovel.com. Zhang Wenming naturally saw him with a face. Admiringly waved. As expected, it is Officer Qin. Unexpectedly, the unsolved case was solved in one night. The police car slowly drove out of the community, and Qin Wen looked a little tired as the horizon gradually occupied the sky. He is so blatant, why can't the law enforcement find out anything before, and where are the remaining corpses? Since he still loves Suisuero, he shouldn't keep the corpses separately. Qin Wen thought about it, his eyelids heavier and heavier, and finally fell asleep. Shueruhua, flesh and blood, and broken limbs were planted. Save her, kill her, don't take her home. It was another strange dream. Qin Wen opened his eyes and found that he had come to the dim basement again. Only this time, he was no longer a lamb lying on the stage waiting to be slaughtered, but stood aside and looked at the stage. Silhouette. That was a beautiful woman, she was divided into countless small pieces, her beautiful face was separated by sharp weapons, the corners of her mouth were connected to the base of her ears, her eyes were hollow, her tongue was broken, and she was extremely miserable. The pile of minced meat was like a jigsaw puzzle, pieced together in pieces, barely maintaining the shape of a person, but some parts were missing. Qin Wen saw her left hand, her fingers still on the stage, but the palm of her hand disappeared. It's the corpse in Lu Yu's hand. Qin Wen realized this in his dream, and at this moment, the female corpse suddenly opened her eyes, and the eyes without eyeballs were bleeding with smelly blood, and she looked at him. Wake up, it's here. The female corpse's lips were also squirming, and every word she said would flow out black blood. Qin Wen's body was chilly, and he woke up suddenly. Wake up! It's here. Jiuxian, the co-pilot, woke him up, and the police car had stopped in front of the police station. It's really hitting evil, I have nightmares. Qin Wen was already sitting in a separate room at this time, waiting for Jiuxian to record his confession. He had already thought about the excuses, so he didn't panic at all. Hey, I've been waiting for a long time, Lu Yu seems to have some mental problems, and he refuses to say anything. Jiuxian frowned and walked in, looking in a bad mood, but still forced Qin Wen to squeeze a kind smile. Don't worry, you helped a lot. We have also confirmed with the landlord here. You are only a tenant. You only need to explain to us what happened before you can leave. Ah, these are all easy to say, but I haven't eaten for a long time. I heard that you can provide free box lunches, right? Can you bring me 2 boxes? Qin Wen chuckled, showing the nature of a dog thief. It's said that this case has been going on for so long, so I don't want the penance or anything else. Are there any bonuses? Hee, you are hungry, this is easy to say. Jiuxian's mouth twitched involuntarily. The first time I saw this kind of person, the brain circuit seemed a bit special. After just going through such a big event, what he was thinking about now was a false box lunch. As for the bonuses, but we have to wait for the conclusion of the case, it depends on Lu Yu's level of cooperation. Within 2 minutes, a law enforcement officer came with 2 boxes of bento and handed them to Qin Wen. Qin opened and ate one box on the spot, and the other box was put in his own bag and directly gave the law enforcement to Ji. Look silly. Good guy, all the boxes in the bureau dare to pack, no matter how you look at it, it looks like a serious illness. Qin Wen was holding the rice while cooperating with the investigation record. After a box of lunch was finished, the law enforcement comrades were basically finished. Well, thank you for your cooperation, we know about it, and someone will send you out later. Jiuxian looked at the information he had received and frowned. It was obvious that Lu Yu was captured, but there were more doubts. Team Ji, a large number of photos from Lu Yu's house have been sorted out, and you can take a look. A young law enforcement officer suddenly came in at the door to send a message, and Jiuxian frowned. I see, next time remember not to speak in front of outsiders. Jiuxian nodded politely at Qin Wen, and hurried out. Qin Wen narrowed his eyes. A lot of photos? He doesn't have a bedroom or computer room. Is that the third door? Qin Wen remembered the weird footsteps and seemed to remind himself to go in, but he was not the kind of curious person, so he did not take the risk. That female ghost is leading me to see those pictures? Why? Thinking of this, the young law enforcement just knocked on the door and came over to take Qin Wen out. Just go back and wait for the news. When there is progress, we will notify you and give you the bonus and penance. Ah, no need. Just forget about penance. Can you give me the discount and bonus? Qin asked. Don't push his face. The young law enforcement comrade laughed awkwardly, not knowing how to respond to him. Ping ping ping. Just when Qin Wen was sent out of the door, there was a sudden tapping sound of high heels, and a familiar figure walked towards him with anxiety. Su Sweking. Qin Wen was taken aback for a while, and Su Sweking also saw him, and even glared at him. Qin Wen was taken aback by the resentment in his eyes, but then he was relieved. Ah! Lu Yu is her only relative, after all, I reported it, But how did she know? Qin Wen and Su Sweking passed by, the other party just glared, and didn't waste much time on him. Okay, Mr. Qin, this is your thing, take it. The young law enforcement officer handed a large bag of things to Qin Wen, which contained Qin Wen's personal belongings, including his mahogany sword, a few packets of salt, and the blood-stained lace apron. Ah, everything has been checked and there is no problem. I am sorry to trouble you, but try not to wear this kind of thing to the street, it will cause panic. It was obvious that the young law enforcement officer was holding back a smile, and it was the first time he saw such a strange person. Qin Wen shrugged, and after thanking him, he stopped the car and returned to the office. There is only one thing in his mind, and that is to check the rewards. The two tasks add up to 15,000 yuan. After traveling for so long, the first time my deposit exceeded 5 digits, I have never surpassed 4 digits before. In just 20 minutes, Qin Wen rushed upstairs and opened the computer to check the app. What? How could it be possible? He opened the software excitedly, but what he saw was not satisfactory. Neither of the two tasks was completed. Where is the mistake? Nightmare mission, Love is the cruelest devil in the world. Progress, 20% special mission, Swear Hua, find out the truth hidden in Fui Yuan apartment, but find out Su Suero's obsession. Progress, 10% no. What's wrong with negative numbers? Qin Wen was frightened, he grumbled, then sat on the chair, thinking calmly. The failure to complete the nightmare mission means that I haven't found the truth, but there is progress showing that something was done right. Qin Wen squeezed his brows in distress. He really has no experience in doing this kind of mental work. In other words, Lu Yu is not the murderer, but it is indeed related to the case. But why the special task becomes a negative number? Qin asked after thinking for a long time, but there was no progress. He sighed, stood up, and prepared to go out again. The only breakthrough now is Su Sweking. Thinking about it carefully, she does have some doubts. The Law Enforcement Bureau did not release the news about Lu Yu's arrest. It was only a few hours, and it should not have spread, at least it shouldn't reach her ears so quickly. Qin Wen gradually had ideas in his mind, and he frowned. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that there was a problem. And she glared at me. Why? How did she know it was me who reported it? Qin Wen gave a sudden heartbeat, leaving a cold sweat. She is monitoring Lu Yu. Qin Wen felt more reasonable as he thought about it. Only in this way could he explain why the other party got the news in the first place, but he didn't know the other party's purpose and monitoring method. Hey, it is necessary to check again. Qin Wen made sufficient preparations again, with a backpack and apron tied, and once again took a taxi to the Hui Yuan apartment. Hey! Officer Qin! Why are you here again? Zhang Wenming was originally sitting in a shed to enjoy the shade. He immediately greeted him when he saw Qin Wen coming. After seeing Qin Wen sitting in a police car, he believed in Qin Wen's identity even more without any doubt. Qin Wen saw that his identity had not been revealed yet, so naturally he continued to use it. Oh, there are still some problems that have not been cleaned up. By the way, are there any surveillance in your residential buildings? Monitoring? It should only be in the lobby and elevator on the first floor. Zhang Wenming scratched his head, as if he didn't know much about it. Qin Wen had no time to waste, so he asked him to take him to the scene. There is no camera. The only camera can't take this corridor. How does she monitor it? The more Qin Wen thought about it, the more something was wrong. He always felt a little creepy, and he was standing in front of 1303 now. That kind of deep cold had disappeared, that is to say, the dirty things were not here. No way. Qin Wen had a conjecture, but he dared not jump to conclusions. He turned his head to look at Zhang Wenming with a puzzled look, and after thinking about it, the corner of his mouth curled up with a smile of a MLM genius. Comrade Xiao Zhang, I need your help. Qin Wen put on a serious face, deepening the atmosphere. Hey? You said. Xiao Zhang didn't know that he was going to be played for nothing, so he looked at Qin Wen seriously. This task is dangerous, you can refuse it, don't force it. Qin Wen first told Xiao Zhang the facts and threw out his choice. Sure enough, Xiao Zhang's expression hesitated. After all, in anyone's eyes, safety is the first priority. It's about the innocence of an innocent person and the trial of an extrajudicial fanatic. Qin Wen quickly began to sell his feelings, with a sad expression. I can try it alone. It doesn't matter if I encounter danger, it's just that. Poor Lu Yu, who is infatuated, will go to jail with a grievance, but the real prisoner can live freely in the sun. How unfair! Qin Wen's speech was impassioned. www.mtlnovel.com. Xiao Zhang really looked admired, and couldn't help but sigh Qin Wen's noble personality. You mean? Lu Yu is probably wronged. Then why arrest him? Xiao Zhang was hung up by Qin Wen and began to worry about Lu Yu's safety. Hey, I only reacted now, and he has been arrested. Even if I say he is innocent, I need proof. What's more? Qin Wen looked regretful at this time, with a trace of apology. Actually, I am not plainclothes law enforcement, just a person who does my best to restore social stability and innocence. I lied before just to use your kindness to find out the truth of the matter. Qin Wen took the initiative to expose his lies and did not give the other party a chance to discover it passively, and the result was as he expected. At this time, Zhang Wenming's attention was not here, and he didn't care about these details at all. Instead, he admired Qin Wen's charm even more. Stop talking. I admire you, a hero like you. Although thankless, but worthy of respect. Xiao Zhang admired the five-body cast. If Qin Wen is really law enforcement, it can be said to be work, but he is not, just an ordinary person, but doing dangerous things for others. That's even more valuable. What do I need to do? Just say it. I will do my best to help you. Hehe, it's very simple, just follow me, obey my command, and protect our safety. Qin Wen's conspiracy succeeded, and the white prostitute had a powerful bodyguard. His face smiled like an unfolded chrysanthemum. Also, don't call me a hero, there are no heroes in the world. They are just ordinary people who have come forward. Xiaozhang shook Qin Wen's hand excitedly, and was completely overwhelmed by the thought of Qin Wen's selfless dedication to others and the spirit of letting himself get involved in danger. Brother Qin, what are we going to do? Zhang Wenming followed Qin Wen. They came to the side of the road to stop the taxi. Qin Wen's expression looked a little disturbed. Go to the Law Enforcement Bureau first, go there and wait for someone to come out, and then we follow her. Qin Wen told Zhang Wenming about the current situation. He frowned. If what happened last night was too dangerous, Qin Wen would never bring people together. Whether he should pay for him or not, the important thing is that he would bring danger to other unrelated people. When he looked at Zhang Wenming's fiery eyes, he already regretted it a bit. It's okay to face ghosts. I have an apron and I have a bit of confidence, but facing a murderer. Hey, this is no way. Xiaozhang should know it in his heart. Qin Wen sighed and was heard by Zhang Wenming. Xiaozhang had always been sincere, and at this time he also felt Qin Wen's thoughts. Don't worry, brother, it's okay, besides, it was originally a case in our community. I worked as a security guard there. It's an internal affair, so don't get lumps in your heart. Xiaozhang smiled honestly, which relieved Qin Wen a lot. The two got on the taxi. Although Qin Wen was still wearing an apron, Xiaozhang was standing beside him. The drivers were relieved a lot. There was no situation that they were afraid to take them. It took only 10 minutes from Fuiyuan community to the Law Enforcement Bureau, and arrived soon. The two of them just hid behind the pillar outside the Law Enforcement Bureau, waiting for Su Sweking to come out. It was only an hour before she arrived at the police station. Qin Wen made sure she hadn't left yet, and could even hear her noisy voice. Because she was emotional, and the voice of her shouting could be heard outside, Qin Wen also understood a little bit. Su Sweking came to defend Lu Yu. She said that Lu Yu was not a murderer, and that those corpses were sent by someone. She also knew about it, and even got it with Lu Yu at the time. Outrageous, in this world, how cruel and terrible things can happen, just like a TV show. Xiaozhang couldn't help but swallowed when he heard this. He reacted a little to the word corpse. Obviously, for the first time, he was so close to something that seemed to only happen in the news. Well, or where do you think the inspiration for TV shows come from? The lower limit of people is unreasonable. It depends entirely on your imagination. If you can think of something, someone must have done it, or is doing it, and is ready to do it. Qin Wen sighed. He has lived for 2 lifetimes. I don't know how many weird news he has read. In his previous life, there was a stock called Zhang San, an extrajudicial lunatic. Many outrageous cases can be done for you. Some can make people laugh to death. Qin Wen and Zhang Wenming waited outside for a long time. During this time, Su Sweking seemed to know that she was too hysterical, and controlled her voice so that they could not hear anything anymore. Qin Wen's most curious thing now is why Lu Yu didn't report it but stayed with him after he got the corpse. Is it really because of being too obsessed to cause madness? Well, the more you put on this box, the better it tastes. Where did you buy it? Qin asked the two of them to wait outside until the afternoon. Su Sweking hadn't even come out yet. The two were very hungry, but they dared not leave for fear of missing the opportunity to follow. At this time, the box lunch that Qin Wen packed from the bureau played a big role. The two squatted on the ground and began to dry the meal. They exchanged a pair of chopsticks, and no one responded. What do you do with so many things? It's delicious and it's over. The two waited for a long time, and finally 20 minutes after eating the box lunch, they saw Su Sweking's figure. She looked angry and quickly walked out. Obviously, her purpose was not achieved. Cough, cough cough. Su Sweking's complexion is very bad. She has no makeup at this time, her complexion is extremely pale, and she keeps coughing, and there are even some brown-purple patches on her neck, which looks a bit hideous. Hide! Don't be seen! Qin Wen pulled Jiang Wenming aside and watched Su Sweking secretly. She seemed to be in a bad state. Although she was still beautiful, it was not as natural as what she saw in the cat's eyes yesterday, but very sick. Huo, this car is beautiful, it turned out to be hers. Seeing Su Sweking getting into a million-class luxury car on the side of the road, Jiang Wenming was amazed. It seems that the other party is not only beautiful, but also from a very good family. No wonder he dared to yell at the Law Enforcement Bureau. However, her excellent family status does not provide her with any preferential treatment. Go, keep up. Qin Wen frowned, greeted Xiao Zhang to get into the taxi, followed all the way, and kept his distance, not too close to attract the others' attention. Following for 20 minutes, Qin Wen saw Su Sweking's car driving into a well-known wealthy area in the city, which was in the outskirts with mansions built around it. Qin Wen knew that the car might be found further in, so he got out of the car from a distance, preparing to walk over the wall and enter Su Sweking's home. Huo, I didn't expect that, she is beautiful and still a rich woman. Qin Wen stood on the street and looked at Su Sweking's grand mansion, feeling extremely sour in his heart. At any rate, he was a traversal crowd. He was so miserable that he had entered the house illegally last night, and he will come again today. Let's go, let's flip in. Qin Wen didn't say anything else and was about to leave. Although Xiao Zhang was a little bit reluctant, he came all the time, not to mention that the other party was a very dangerous person with great suspicion. Thinking about it this way, he felt more comfortable. The wall of Su Sweking's house is almost 3 meters high. Qin Wenqing was fortunate to call Jiang Wenming to help, otherwise it would be impossible for him to enter. Jiang Wenming held Qin Wen's bag underneath, and lifted it up to the wall at once. Qin Wen first threw the backpack over, and then just wanted to reach out and pull Jiang Wenming up, but he didn't expect that he would directly turn over by pushing on the wall. I don't know how many times it's better than him. Anyone, Xiao Zhang? Qin Wen jumped down cautiously, almost licking his feet, couldn't help but marvel at Jiang Wenming's ability. Ha ha ha, laughed brother, I have liked to read martial arts novels since I was a child, and I often go to the mountains to practice, and then I didn't practice in the 18 palms of Zhonglong, but the tendons have grown a lot. Jiang Wenming scratched his head embarrassedly, and Qin Wen became more interested in this honest boy. The two of them carefully walked around the camera and walked along the blind corner to the back of the mansion. There was a garden for walking, a swimming pool and a garage, where Su Sweking's car just parked. Is this the life of the rich? Xiao Zhang was hit again, and Qin Wen's situation was not much better. It's fake that money can't buy happiness, it's true that we can't buy it with this little money. The two of them endured their sadness and began to look for opportunities to enter the interior of the mansion. The glass door connected to the garden was open, but the two dared not enter rashly. They were here to look for evidence of crime. If they were found before they were found, it would be a trivial matter to be caught, and if Su Sweking really had any problems, leaving them here, that would be the worst situation. Qin Wen suddenly felt something very familiar. He looked in the direction of the breath, and sure enough, in the garden, there was a place specially partitioned, planted with that strange blue flower. But the yin qi there was very strong, and Qin Wen felt dizzy when he was far away. Little Zhang, can you feel anything? Hey? No? What's wrong? Sure enough, www.mtlnovel.com. Jiang Wenming didn't react at all to the strong yin. Only special people who started the inspiration can feel it. This is why ordinary people can't see the spiritual body. No, it's not a crime, it can only be said that she also planted these flowers. Qin Wen frowned and was sullen, indicating that yesterday's dirty stuff may also appear here, so he must be cautious. Thinking of this, Qin Wen sighed heavily. In desperation, he took out the phone and dialed Shangzhen. Teacher. Is there anything wrong? Calling now. Shan Xian's immature voice came, and it sounded very excited. After all, he admired Qin Wen, but his character was shy, and he was usually embarrassed to contact him. It was natural that Qin Wen took the initiative to call him. Can you go out now? If possible, I will give you an address, come over and help the teacher, and the teacher will teach you how to make good friends. Qin Wen remembered that one of the tasks given by the app was to help the shy Shangzhen find friends, indicating that this little guy must be lonely inside, and this trick must work. Ah, but my homework is not finished yet. Shangzhen hesitated a bit, but Qin Wen was very good at handling people's minds. Female friends. Ah, would a girl be friends with me, is it really okay? Shangzhen is still squeaky in his mouth, but he is very honest. I'm going out now. Qin Wen sent his address and told Shan Xian to wait for his own news, but if he couldn't contact him after 2 hours, he would directly call the police and then come in, and this time an exception, the ability can be used. Brother Qin. Look. She's on the second floor. Zhang Wenming's eyes were very sharp, and he saw Su Sueking's figure through a gap in the curtain. Qin Wen squinted his eyes for a long time before recognizing which window Xiao Zhang was talking about. A rare opportunity, go around the flower bed and go in through that door. Qin asked the two of them while Su Sueking was not on the first floor, found a route that was in a blind spot for monitoring, and went around the sliding door. Remember, the quieter the better when you go in, and put this on. In order to avoid being recognized when they found it, Qin Wen took out a pair of black stockings from his bag, handed it to Xiao Zhang, motioning him to put it on his head. No need it. Zhang Wenming obviously didn't expect Qin Wen to be so prepared. Although their current behavior is indeed a bit of petty theft, their original intention was to investigate the truth. They made them feel a little bit like Zhang Yang, but Qin Wen was very persistent and even a little eager to try. It seems that I finally found a chance to do just that. How about that? Safety first. Qin Wen took the lead and put the stockings on his head. A little tight. The pulling force of the silk stockings squeezed Qin Wen's face together, and the extra part stood on top of his head like a soaring braid. At this time, Qin Wen's image was a bit hard to describe. His head was like a deformed tadpole, and he was still wearing a blood-stained apron. The hilt of a mahogany sword leaked out of the big backpack behind it, which looked like a neuropathy. I just forget it. Xiao Zhang was very resistant, but I have to say that Qin Wen made sense, and in the end he could only take off the vest and cover his face. Just like that, a man in stockings with a blood apron and a masked man shirtless and full of tendons, two strange flowers sneaked into Su Sueking's home. Who would have thought that these two guys came for justice? Find it quietly, turn the phone to silent, go over there, I'm here, I will notify you by text message if you find anything. Qin Wen divided the first floor into 2 parts. He was responsible for the more dangerous and easy to find part. Xiao Zhang nodded, and the two moved separately. There are 3 floors in the entire villa, and each floor covers an area of 400 to 500 square meters. I am afraid it will take some time to search for clues without being found. Library. Su Sueking likes reading books so much. There are many bookshelves in the first room of Qin Wensu. There are probably thousands of books in this room, including all kinds of physical novels, literary works, and even autobiography of great men. It was previously reported that Su Suero and sisters ran a company together. It was Su Suero's boss at the time. Now that Su Suero is dead, Su Sueking is in full control. This seems to be a reasonable motive for committing the crime. Qin Wen rummaged through the library and found nothing but a photo on the desk. It was a group photo of Su Shui and Su Sueking. Both of them were dressed in formal attire and smiled very well. A date was written in the upper left corner, 6/28. It seems to be participating in the ribbon-cutting ceremony, possibly to commemorate the establishment of the two companies. There is no clue. Qin Wen changed the room. It is connected to the swimming pool. It is a small room for changing clothes. From the outside, the space is very large, but the inside is really only a dozen square meters. Only one changing closet is placed, and one can take a shower. Bathroom. It's locked. Qin Wen glanced at the lock on the changing closet, asking for a password. He sighed and had to leave. At this moment, Qin Wen's cell phone rang suddenly. "Brother, come here, I found a lot of photos, I don't know if they are useful." Xiaozhang gave Qin Wen a message. He didn't dare to delay, and quickly touched it, for fear of making a noise to draw Su Sweking down. "You must know that he is a murderous suspect, and he may be surrounded by ghosts. Even if he is protected by Xiaozhang, whoever will die unconfirmed." Qin Wen came to the room where Xiaozhang was and found that it was a specially decorated memory room full of photos. "It's all with my family." Qin Wen glanced roughly. "These photos are all arranged in order. There is a family portrait of her from childhood to adulthood. There is also an old couple on it, Su Sweking's parents. But starting from a certain photo, the figure of the old woman disappeared. After a few more pictures, only their two sisters are left in the picture, and a few more pictures. Only Su Sweking is left." Qin Wen watched carefully one by one. He could see that the light in Su Sweking's eyes in the photos was getting less and less, and by the last one, it had become deadly silent, but strangely, there were a few photos with her sister. "Appears to be happier than the others. Didn't she treat Lu Yu as her family? Why is there no picture of Lu Yu?" Qin Wen looked through all the photos carefully and found some doubts. Su Sweking's expression was very dim after her parents passed away, but a few photos laughed happily, explaining what happened in a short period of time. Make her happy. But just after that, Su Sweking's expression suddenly became colder, and then in the next picture, Su Suero's figure disappeared from the photo. What happened during the period? Qin Wen squinted his eyes and his thoughts were confused. It was impossible for Xiaozhang Yujiwufu to have any insights. After reading the photos, the two of them continued to search for other rooms. "I have to say that this villa is really ridiculously big." The two searched for more than an hour before they were sure that they hadn't pulled anything down. "Let's go to the second floor and take a look. It should be a rest if there is no movement for so long." Qin Wen pointed to the stairs, and Xiaozhang nodded. Fortunately, the stairs here are made of marble. If they are wooden, the creaking sound is easy to expose. "Hush!" Hastily. "Get out! Go down!" Qin Wen took the lead and walked in front, but when his stockings just exceeded the floor of the second floor, Su Sweking's door suddenly opened and she walked out in uniform. Qin Wen was so frightened that he almost turned downstairs, and quickly waved at Xiaozhang. The two of them retreated to the first floor with the fastest speed and the smallest sound, and hid behind the kitchen counter. Joking, Su Sweking didn't notice them, and slowly walked down the stairs, and painted delicate makeup on her face. She didn't feel sick in the morning. "I went to makeup for more than an hour." Qin Wen quietly observed Mimi. Su Sweking should be going to the company, otherwise it would not be so formal. Good opportunity, there is no one in the house now. Qin Wen wanted to wait for Su Sweking to leave, but unexpectedly, the other party walked straight toward the kitchen. "I was found." Qin Wen's heartbeat speeded up, his breathing was short, and Xiaozhang was also sweating profusely. He wanted to preemptively take Su Sweking down, but Qin Wen gave him a desperate wink and refused to let him do it. Xiaozhang restrained it. Da-da-da. The sound of Su Sweking's high-heeled shoes got closer and closer, and finally stopped in front of the bar. At this time, there was a bar that was more than 1 meter apart between them, and Su Sweking could see the two who broke in as long as she moved forward. Qin Wen's heartbeat was about to explode, and he felt that Su Sweking had a familiar aura, not a human aura. This one should be enough. Su Sweking did not walk around, but picked up a chopping knife from the bar, felt the sharpness with her hand, and then turned and left. Hey! Qin Wen felt relieved and the whole person relaxed. Su Sweking took the knife and walked away. Instead of going out, she walked into the changing room connected to the swimming pool. What is she going to do there? Qin Wen wiped the sweat sticking out of the stockings and stared at the door of the changing room closely. It took a full half an hour before Su Sweking's figure reappeared, but the knife was gone, replaced by a paper box, and I don't know what's in it. There is nothing worthy of her staying in that room for half an hour. Qin Wen had been to that room and smiled at this moment. There is something in that dressing room. She really has a problem.